Hello everyone, welcome to Curtis Holt the Movie, Let's Chat About Stuff. This video is another endurance test, as I'm calling it. We're basically just going to chat about random things and I'm going to see whether my voice holds up. So first of all, let's chat about strategy. There's quite a lot of strategy that goes into like doing YouTube videos and stuff, mostly about like the timings when things go out. I think I said in a somewhat recent video that I was kind of changing my approach. So instead of doing videos in a linear fashion where they're just being released as they're finished, I'm instead not thinking of them as videos, rather as weeks, where I'm creating things for the next week. So doing work 1 week in advance. And it doesn't necessarily mean like you make stuff for every single day, but you focus on the Monday. So it's like, okay, well, if I finish a video, that'll be for the next Monday. And if I do any extra videos, that'll be for the subsequent days. So for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. And I kind of like it because you kind of feel like you have more time to plan and prepare. And you also know that the videos should generally be high quality, but it depends on the subject. Now, because I haven't been able to do as much recording with the, voice thing going on, I've been a bit more strategic about what I've been choosing to do, or up until this point, I should say. So that's why the Modular Workspaces, the new product that was released, was prioritized above everything else, because that was going to bring in a fair amount of money compared to just doing like the, regular filler videos. We're probably going to go back to some filler videos now, but like I've got two that I've recorded and almost finished editing that were recorded like a couple of weeks ago. So like this is where strategy comes in, because I'm not doing as much recording now. I'm having to like pull some of the old recordings and kind of use those to try and keep the motion going. I've also been spending a lot more time responding to like messages and stuff, which isn't very normal for me, but one of the reasons I've actually been able to do it, strangely, is by adjusting the layout of the windows on my screen. And this sounds really weird, but like as we've talked about before, even the smallest changes in like your organization or your workflow can make quite a big impact. I mean, I used to make fun of people for trying to kind of optimize their workflow in kind of silly ways, and I still see people doing that on Twitter as well, but it did make a big impact. Like, maybe let me see if I can show you. Just give me a minute to set this up. So if I show the screen, it kind of looks something like this, where I can essentially see all of my main work stuff at once. And the interesting thing about it is that if I've got like messages open here, I can kind of, plan them out here, but I'm reminded of what I'm supposed to be doing. That's the key point, because distraction is such an important like anti-work force, and I've been pretty good at avoiding distraction, but it's very difficult to get rid of all of it. But having all of this on the screen here is good for reminding me what I'm supposed to do. So if I get distracted up in the corner here, I can still see the message that I'm trying to write to someone. And I used to do it where I was kind of writing it down on pen and paper kind of in front of me before I write it out for the actual message. But actually having it right there kind of visible in your eye line is, I think, quite an important thing. I also quite like if you maximize a window on Windows 11 like this and you minimize it using the same button, it goes back exactly to the place where it was as well. So that's kind of cool for quickly focusing on these and then putting them back. I might try and write some kind of like batch script or something like that to kind of reopen these windows in the right way. Yeah, it's been kind of interesting seeing how much of a difference that makes. But also responding to kind of help requests and stuff is, I guess, part of this, trying to contribute to the community culture, where things can't just be, kind of a selfish work effort. We can't just make our own stuff and expect people to see it. We need to invest some time into responding to people, and I consider that contributing to social good as well. So for example, there's been a couple of like, oh, please take a look at my portfolio and tell me what you think requests. So, I spent some time looking at those. I think I did mention in a recent video, like watching the Grimes with Lex Friedman podcast and her talking about how we should consider social good as a form of income. So that's kind of how I've been thinking about it. Like, I'm not paid for my time to respond to some of these things, but if I consider social good to be a form of income, then I think it's good to spend time doing some of that. So I'm finally going to be seeing a doctor tomorrow about my voice thing, my voice pain, which seems to be made worse by recording. But because I haven't been doing any recording for like a week or more, actually maybe more than a week now, it's actually been getting a bit better, but it hasn't completely gone away. So I'm going to be doing like a lot of kind of endurance testing today, like I said at the beginning, where I'm going to just like record as much as I can and kind of almost intentionally strain it just to see how much worse it gets in the evening compared to like the last few days. So that way I'll be able to say definitively that yes, like doing this kind of recording, this chatting, this straining is definitely having a concrete impact on it. So when I see the doctor tomorrow, I can inform them about that. Anyway, why is it taking so long for me to see a doctor? Oof. Not that you care, but I'll just put it on record anyway, because I've been a bit effed over by the NHS, the National Health Service. And I don't want to speak downly on the NHS, because it's very nice to have a kind of public healthcare system, but we should hold it to a certain standard, and the standard to which I've been treated by is not particularly high. high. And what I mean by that is my GP, my local general practitioner, gave me a referral for an urgent appointment to see an ENT, an ear, nose and throat specialist. It was listed as urgent because it affects my work. I can't do as much work, general recording, so my income would take a hit, which is why I've had to be a bit strategic about kind of rearranging the types of content we're doing. Now, because that referral was posted as urgent, I was given a notice on my app, because with the NHS you get an app where you can track your appointments, saying that I would need to be given an appointment by the 15th of August, right? And then if it went past that, I would be able to phone up and inquire about, when it was going to be reviewed. But the thing is, sod's law, of course, we got to the 15th and passed it, and it was overdue for a review. So I had to look on the app, and there was a big red bar that said review overdue. So I phoned them up and asked them, when do you think this is going to be seen? Like, because it's overdue now, like, do you have any information? Can you tell me anything? And they said, no, of course they can't give any information because they have no idea, apparently. They said it just depends when the ENT person can take a look at it. So yes, very helpful. Well, actually, we're skipping ahead a bit, because before that, I did actually get a letter through the post saying I had an appointment, a video/telephone appointment, on the same day I received that letter. So I think it was like the 12th of August or something, and it said, well, you've got an appointment the 12th of August today at 6 in the morning. I was asleep at 6 in the morning and I didn't even receive a phone call for it, so that just didn't happen. So I phoned them up about that and I said, hey, could I rearrange this, because I've missed this and I didn't even receive a phone call. Like, what happened? I just got the letter. Is that, like, what happened? They said, well, actually, on our systems it says you haven't even been given an appointment. That was just an admin thing, something about trying to make sure they had the right details. And I was like, okay, well, that's a bit confusing, because on the thing it says you have a video/phone call appointment, and they're like, yeah, we understand the confusion, but that's just how the system works. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll keep waiting for the appointment. And then we got to the point where the first referral got overdue, and then I phoned up and we've already talked about that. Anyway, so I thought, you know what, I'm not gonna want to wait for too long to get this seen. I might end up having to go private. So I left it a few more days, and guess what happened? On the app, where it said that the review was now overdue, it randomly changed. So instead of saying that the referral was overdue for review, it had just moved the review date back to the 3rd of October. So now I would have to wait over a month just to have the referral reviewed for someone to give me an appointment. And I was like, what? That's cheating. You can't just move the review date back if it's overdue for a review. But they did. So then I thought, you know what? F this, I'm going to go private. So I went onto the website where I can book an appointment with a private ENT that I know, because they've solved a problem for me before. And I did that. It didn't require a referral letter. And I managed to get an appointment for 1 week's time. Just 1 week. That's it. They had something available. So I grabbed that. All very easy. Now, in between the time of booking that appointment and going to this appointment, which is tomorrow, something changed on the app again. So where it said the appointment needed to be reviewed by the 3rd of October, which is ages away, it now says, oh, you have an appointment. We've booked you in, but when do you think it is? Considering that I've got an appointment with the private doctor tomorrow, do you think it's a week's time, a month's time, 2 months' time? No, it's in 1 year's time. After pushing the referral review time back, they managed to give me a first consultation, not even like anything complex, any complex investigations or testing or whatever, just a chat with an ENT in 1 year's time. 17th of August 2023, which is ridiculous. So basically, the only way I've been able to get a doctor booked to kind of talk about my throat pain that's been affecting my work is by paying for it. So now I am paying to go private, because if I didn't, I would have to wait a whole year of my life just to talk to someone who's probably going to go, oh, we don't know, maybe we should do some tests. I'll just remind you, that was listed as an urgent appointment. I watched my GP, my doctor, tick the urgent button. There's like a few different options in a row when they're filling out the form for the NHS. They have a form above where they can type in like the kind of reasoning for it, and then I think they can add like some of the hospitals kind of local to the area. I don't remember the entire form, but then I think there were a few options horizontally in a row where they could tick the kind of priority level, and I remember they ticked the urgent, well, they crossed it, I think. So they said they were doing urgent, I saw them do urgent, and this is what I've ended up with. So thank God the sales for Modular Workspaces have done okay. I was kind of intending to save up some of that money for the new studio when we eventually get into that, but let's see. It's probably going to go to medical bills. So that is why it's taken so long to be seen, because I've been dealing with all of this bureaucracy. Imagine if someone has undiagnosed cancer. I'm not saying I do, or how would I know? Imagine people that do genuinely have problems, because a lot of cancers and serious things, they're quite subtle. Like some of the first signs are quite difficult to identify. So imagine having to wait like a whole year just, again, not even to have that diagnosed, but just to speak to someone, to kind of begin that dialogue. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Thankfully, I'm a patient person and I can pass the time pretty well just by focusing on work, but that's the problem here. Like the new house, getting the renovations done, getting the studio ready, etc., that's going to take quite a long time. There are some hiccups. I won't go into too many details. It's more like kind of waiting for certain dates for things to be ready, and emails back and forth, waiting for certain people to give certain, like when there are lots of people involved, it takes ages because there are bottlenecks everywhere. So what I want to do is I want to focus in on my work, make as many videos, as many products, and just because I enjoy that, I want to just focus and do that and enter a work trance where I can just produce stuff for people and make the time pass by, and as I'm doing that, I'm going to watch the progress on the house kind of go by and maybe record some stuff for that as well. And that's what I want to do. I want to focus, but I can't focus and enter that work trance because of this issue. And that's what annoys me. It's like there is now a hurdle, a bottleneck I need to get over to enter that trance. But maybe here's a problem. If this problem is caused by the work, by recording too much, then I won't be able to do that anyway. I'll need to readjust how I approach my work and my business in the future. So that brings us on to asking for help. In a hypothetical scenario where I go to the doctor, they decide I need a laryngoscopy to have a look at my vocal cords, and they discover that there's something there like a polyp or a nodule or whatever that isn't resolving itself and maybe needs some kind of just surgery, like a laser thing or something like that. And if that leads to a situation where, I need just a, mild bit of surgery to kind of assist with that, then the recovery would mean that I won't be able to use my voice at all for a little while, like a couple of weeks or something, a few weeks. In that case, I would need to ask for help and to kind of adjust my content strategy. And I've already been thinking about that. I've had some people, kind of recommend, hey, there are some really good AIs now for text-to-speech stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of, it might be funny, like if I do it as a bit of a meme, but it won't really have the value that I want to get across to people. So I spoke to some other Blender creators, and what we decided was that if I had something I wanted to show people, like a certain new feature or a new product or something, I would ask different Blender creators to record a very quick segment for a video, kind of explaining part of what I want to talk about. So for example, like CG Matter would be at the beginning saying, hey everyone, Curtis can't talk at the moment, so he wanted to show this product he's been working on. It does this, this, and this. So I'm going to hand it over to this other creator that's going to run you through a quick demonstration. Then it would jump to someone like, Agnev Render Rides, for example, and they'll just say a paragraph which I've given them to say, and it should be easy for them to record because it'll just be short, and then it will hand it on to another creator and they'll do their little bit, and basically I'll just string it all together and make some stuff for the screen. So it's still Blender creators talking about it, it's still relevant to the channel, but because I can't talk, they'll just be my voice for me. So I have been thinking about that. If there's a situation where I need like a kind of vocal recovery period, then I'm going to enlist the help of my friends and co-creators. Alright, so Curtis, if you haven't been doing as much recording, then what have you been doing? We all know you can't keep your hands still. Idle hands are the devil's work, as they say, or some variation of that phrase. Well, I've been packing up the house because, in preparation for the moving and stuff, we've got, like, we've never moved from this house. So there's just years and years, layers of stuff stacked away up in the loft, or that would be the attic if you're using the American vocabulary. And it's like old games from when I was a kid, but more than that, because it's like all of our stuff from when we were kids. Even my parents have like stuff from when they were young up there as well. Like it's all caked in like this thick layer of this weird dust that's been settling up there for years, and like whenever we go up I can feel it kind of caking my throat. It's really bad. I really should be wearing a mask up there, but it's been taking so much effort getting all that stuff down, filtering through it, like chucking it all away. So that's been tiring me out, and that's been taking up a lot of time. In between that, as I said, I've been responding to messages, community members, etc., doing a bit of planning, doing a lot of thinking as well about things I want to make in the future. But also I've been playing a lot of video games, kind of just enjoying, feeling inspired again by other people's creations and content, and also investing more time into Flight Simulator. I love Flight Simulator and I'm very happy getting back into it now, but I thought I'm not just going to do the thing that I would always do and just, fly around the same places again and again. I need to expand my horizons, which is actually a really appropriate term for this, and explore more of the world in this. So I've started doing a bit of a world tour. I don't know if I'll finish it because there's this app I found called Volanta, which is really, really cool. I'm going to show it on the screen. So one of the main kind of content creators for Flight Simulator and other flight simulators is Orbex. They're a company that make aircraft and more detailed versions of airports and all sorts of other stuff. But they've made this app called Volanta, and basically you can see everyone else using Volanta and kind of other aircraft flying around the world. world on the map in 3D as well, so you can see how high they are when you rotate. But it also installs a plugin to your flight simulator, and you can track all of the flights you've done. And more than that, if you click on the flights, you can see a 3D flight path of your entire flight as well. Plus, you can also track which countries you've been to. This isn't sponsored, by the way, I just love it. So that you can see here, because I started in the UK and I'm down in about Kosovo at the moment. And if I had some of the other aircraft flying around the world, here you go. So you can see where I've been. So I'm going to keep on moving down, I think, and kind of going around. I've also been playing with some of the other content, like the they did a collaboration with Top Gun. So you've got like the F-15 or the F-18, and they've also got the experimental Dark Star jet as well, which is really cool because it can go like up to Mach 10 and a bit beyond as well. But you have to do this inverted flight thing to get the speed up to Mach 3 before you can actually kind of pull back up and enable the scramjets to get to the upper atmosphere. But then by doing that, you can actually kind of see the curvature of the planet and then get really far around as well. So I did a thing where I started off in Antarctica, and I did that technique to get to the bottom of Argentina here as like a kind of escape from Antarctica challenge I set myself, but I just failed right at the very end. There was an airfield, I think it was somewhere here on Dawson Island, Almirante, I think this is actually in Chile, but I was just going a bit too slow on the landing, about like 130 knots. I probably didn't keep an eye on the speed, because when you're in that Dark Star craft, you have this virtual screen in front of you where you can kind of see it. Didn't actually know how slow the aircraft could fly, like, and what was a good kind of stable landing speed. So I just went a bit too slow and then kind of just fell a bit short of the runway, which is troublesome after escaping from Antarctica. Anyway, probably sounds a bit nerdy, but I love flight simulators. I think they're really fun, and this is a really cool app. You can also add friends in it and everything. So yeah, nice to kind of explore these hobbies. And it kind of inspires me. I think, well, maybe I might want to design my own aircraft for fun and kind of add it to the game, because you can mod Flight Simulator. That might be an interesting project. Make it in Blender, prepare it for the simulator, kind of look up how to do that. I used to mod games. There's nothing available online, but for fun, I used to make parts for Kerbal Space Program as well. So I'm quite happy with the release of the Modular Workspaces add-on. I've added it to the website store page here as well. I'm also quite happy with the number of sales. It has met expectations, and I made sure to try and give it some good documentation. So we have a Notion page. If we click and let this load, you know, we've got some nice text and images here. And I'm trying to take the principle of, if we encounter an issue when responding to help requests, if we take what the lessons that were learned from that and then add them to the documentation, then we won't necessarily have to answer that same request again in the future. Of course, it is going to come through. I get a lot of people asking the same stuff where there is easily available information online to solve that problem. General installation issues when installing Python add-ons for Blender, I think they call them gotchas, like common issues that people bump into. So I want to try and take the policy of taking information we learn from help requests and then just inserting it into the documentation in some way. There's still work, there's still improvements which I can do with that. I think it'll be a nice kind of policy to adopt in the future. As for the new house, like, I would love to do home renovation videos, just like updates on how progress goes when the building does properly start, when it kicks off. But I've been speaking to my parents because it is a family home, and we're a bit concerned about how much can be shown, obviously, because this house is kind of designed a lot around the view. So obviously you can't show the outside if you're trying to show your home online, because you don't want to get doxed or swatted. That's a big problem. But I think it would be good doing content for the studio, for example, you know, showing how you can block things out in Blender. And what I have been doing is using the measuring app on the iPhone to get estimates, because it's not like 100% accurate, but estimates of the kind of sizes of furniture pieces I'm going to be taking in, so that I could block them out in Blender and then show how they're going to fit in a room. So pretty much having a bunch of almost accurately measured pieces, so we can rearrange them in 3D space without having to do it in real life. So that saves a lot of manual effort. I think that could be a really cool project, showing how, you know, you can utilize Blender for visualization purposes like that and experiment with layouts before you actually put something in there. Because one thing you can do in 3D space, which I've been really appreciating, is you can visualize sidelines. So for example, I laid out like all of my monitors out in my studio, and I also had a TV on the side, and while I was sitting there I was looking at the TV thinking, oh wait, hold on, one of these monitors is clipping my view of the television. So it's just little things like that that you might not realize until you actually put it there in the real world. It's like an extremely beneficial feature of being able to visualize the 3D space and camera views. Another thing is also like if you have, for example, like your camera in between two monitors like I've got here, you can visualize that in the 3D space as well. So I'll be able to see what kind of stuff is visible behind before it's actually there in real life, if that makes sense. So I can kind of visualize what shelves are there, what kinds of stuff will be on it. etc. So I think there are some really cool projects kind of like hidden away in that possibility of using Blender. Obviously for things like showing the rest of the house, things will have to be done in reverse. So for example, if you're like coming upstairs and there's a view out where you can see windows and you can see outside, which reveal the location, instead you'd have to do it in reverse. So you'd come up the stairs backwards and then keep a narrow field of view so you don't see the outside. And so I've been thinking about things like that and what kinds of content would be appropriate. It's been really interesting watching like the Linus Tech Tips videos where he's been showing how he's upgraded certain parts of his house. So I've kind of been watching those and thinking, okay, are there any kind of lessons I can take away from that if we were going to do that kind of thing in the future? So, I mean, we've talked about strategy and kind of adjusting how I'm making content, how I'm putting it out. And there is one unfortunate side effect to, you know, having to adjust to these new life variables, which is that some things get missed out. So for example, one thing I wanted to do recently was have like weekly events on our Discord server. Side note, there's a new challenge up. It should still be running by the time this video goes out. But anyway, so I wanted to do like casual chats and gaming nights like every week, but you know, that would require me being in a pretty good state to be doing a lot of talking and kind of generally laughing and engaging and, you know, putting all this strain on or having fun with people. That on top of having my kind of new workflow for making and recording a lot of videos and being a bit more relaxed and not having to overplan everything. So that those were two kind of increased vocal effort things. But then on top of that, also getting back on track with the Blenderness recordings, which has been a shame because I know that some of the other members there have wanted to take part in discussions, but obviously I'm kind of the one that's mostly in charge of getting that stuff online and recording. So I need to be there for that as well. So a lot of these things have had to suffer because of these changes, which have had to be made to kind of the frequency that things get made and the kinds of stuff that gets put out. But again, talking about strategy, it does kind of open up some interesting possibilities for other types of content, because I have a content strategy page on my Notion, which is like, okay, if we are feeling our absolute ideal, our optimum, our most productive and ready to engage, what steps do we take throughout the day to maximize our potential? So for example, what steps can we do to maximize the number of engagements we have with content, the number of followers we gain every day, the amount of money we make every day? And believe it or not, there is a plan for that. I do have an optimum formula for what to do on every day, what to say and when to post things and stuff like that. There's also a list of like things for bringing in old videos which have lost their relevance, but making new stuff to bring them back into the circuit as well. So there is a formula there, which I have not been doing, because it's okay having like an idea for how to maximize your potential. It's a different thing actually executing it, especially if you're just not feeling up for it, because I don't do stuff if I don't feel like it, with some exceptions for like grind necessary things like editing. But anyway, the point of talking about that is that I was trying to adjust that formula to see whether more non-video related things could be inserted to kind of make the non-video side of the business more reliable or kind of have more growth potential. And it seems like there are some things which can be done, largely focusing around Twitter actually, because it's one of the best kind of social platforms for growth. I mean, and TikTok for that matter, not Instagram though. Instagram's been really suffering just in general. So it all presents an opportunity to start kind of like learning about these other possibilities. You know, I mentioned the Flight Simulator and it's been a really fun hobby, but I have been playing some other games as well. Like, I finished Tiny Tina's Wonderlands and I loved it more than I expected. I thought it was going to be just like a weird kind of, you know, side tangent to the Borderlands universe. And I'm a big fan of the Borderlands games, but so like Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep was an expansion to the second Borderlands game, and it kind of added this Dungeons and Dragons element where you're kind of playing, you're shooting and looting your way through this strange, quirky world that this girl, Tiny Tina, a character in the series, is being the dungeon master for. And it's really interesting concept, because when you're playing your way through Wonderlands, like there'll be a fair number of quests where it's kind of changing as you're playing through it. Like, oh, this dungeon master's forgot to add these pieces, so they're going to be changing them on the fly as you're shooting through it, which is quite interesting. Also, there are a lot of kind of, it's a lot of quirky comedy. It's also a very like LGBT friendly game, which is kind of cool. And I just like the vibe and style of it. So that encouraged me to go back and play through Borderlands 3 a bit as well, because I was like, I never really played the DLC content for that, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm still playing through it as well. So that's been really fun to just sit down and enjoy some of this other content, which I might have been missing out on because I didn't really give myself as much time to play through those kinds of games. Also, Marvel's Spider-Man has come out on PC now, and that's been really, really fun to play with. Like, the swinging through the city is really addictive, especially when you level up your skills to get like all these other things you can do while you're swinging. Things like when you roll and then if you tap A again to do another jump, that's like, it keeps the flow as you're kind of jumping over buildings in between your swings. I know this is really like kind of geeky and nerdy, but you know, I'm quite passionate about games. So yeah, it's been really fun just kind of sitting and playing those things. So another thing that's been going on recently is a lot has been changing in the lives of a fair number of Blender creators. So not just, me with all this stuff, but if you've been watching like CG Matter's recent videos, he's been adjusting the content on his channel, so he's not really doing Blender tutorials anymore. He will still be doing some on the Default Cube, his second channel. But generally, he's going to be doing a task where he's walking across America, and he's going to be doing kind of like travel log-ish type content. So that's going to be really interesting to watch, and I think he's quite, brave for making such a change on that. But it's been really interesting kind of watching his audience, watching his sub growth, reading the comments, etc., and seeing how people react to a change that's significant. And it's quite nice to see that a lot of people are actually kind of sticking around with him, because that's something none of us were ever sure, like how the audience would react to a sudden change like that. Like if I suddenly started doing something completely different, like makeup videos, which isn't going to happen, so don't worry. Like how many people stick around for such a significant change? So realistically, the question is how much of the audience is there for the personality rather than the content? Obviously, a lot of people are there for both, but I think some people fall more on one side than the other sometimes. And those are the people that are more likely to stick around if there's a significant change. So he's had a little bit of a sub drop, and what I'm hoping is that it kind of plateaus and then the new videos get recommended to people and then it starts growing again. But the problem with YouTube is, as a lot of us have found out, is that your videos only really do well if your new videos perform well with your pre-existing subscribers. So you're going to get recommended more if your pre-existing subscribers like the video and watch that. And there are a lot of factors, like high click-through rate, high watch time, etc., which really contribute to that. So doing sudden content changes is a really, really, really risky move. But I do think it's important to live your own life and kind of do what you want to do. And I will always maintain that thought, I believe, because, I've done videos even somewhat recently where people try and tell you that you should do things in different ways. Even on Twitter, I've had some engagements like that. And I say, look, doesn't matter what you say, I'm always going to do what I want to do on my channel. And that's going to be the bottom line. And I've had some other people come along and say, actually, I have some thoughts about that as well. And I'm just like, you don't get to say what people get to put on their channels. For a lot of us people, this is, yes, a business, but also it's an outlet. We're still going to be alive if YouTube doesn't exist. We come here because there is value more than just the monetary benefit. There is value more than just how it can assist in our immediate needs in our life. There are interests which we wouldn't usually be able to attach to other kind of more important, maybe some existential factors of life. So for example, like how do I help the world? How do I help people in the world? How do I reduce suffering? Most hobbies can't be connected to existential things like that, but in YouTube they can. So for example, I can make artwork and display a video about it, and at the same time inspire someone across the world to try some new techniques which leads them down another path of exploring a new form of artwork, which maybe one day leads them to getting a certain job, etc. Like there are lots of stories of stuff like that which happens. So that's something that YouTube affords, which other kind of platforms or other kind of career paths don't afford. Not just is there a monetary benefit there, but there's also a kind of legacy benefit. There's an existential value which can come through YouTube, which you don't get from anything else. I still think it's incredible that I've been able to make a job around this. I think I'm just like the luckiest person in the world. I said that to my mum while walking the dog the other day, that I'm having like waves of gratefulness. It's like you just kind of stop and look around and think, how has this happened? Like, how is this possible? How am I able to make what I want and have people see it and be okay? Like, it's incredible. Part of it is like one of my policies, one of my guidelines for life, because I have like a list of kind of things to remind myself, is you don't know what you don't know. And it's basically, well, it means a few things. So first of all, you don't know everything. There's always more to learn. So be open-minded. The second part of it is your entire experience of your life up until this point, the things which you've built leading you to this point in your life. You can't remember most of them. Basically, this is one of the reasons why we feel imposter syndrome, because you don't remember like all of the failed experiments you did, like, and all of the successes, especially because you're more inclined to remember negative experiences. But most of the stuff you've been through, you can't remember. So when you're sitting there in the here and now, looking around in amazement at the stuff that you have, you don't remember exactly what you did to get it. You can have trust in the fact that you followed a rather sensible process to get there, and that you made failures, made mistakes, and then learned from them, and then adapted in accordance to that. But you can't remember all of it. So you have to kind of learn to have trust in yourself that you have potential, and that potential is what got you here as well. But there's always a balance there, right? Because there'll be opportunities which open up for you. It's up to you to take advantage of them. You can't get everywhere with just skill alone, and this is where luck comes into it, but luck for me is not some kind of like, you know, otherworldly spiritual force or a currency which you can get more of and then lose by walking under a ladder. No, luck for me is just the variable parts of life which you don't have direct control over. So for example, as the billions of people around the world do their own things every day, they are affecting the world, which is going to affect your life. An algorithm like YouTube's algorithm is a good demonstration of that, because other people around the world are watching videos and they are influencing the algorithm to display certain types of content. You are caught up in that tornado. That tornado created by those butterflies being the individual viewers, you know, the butterfly effect. So you are affected by all of these tiny micro interactions. That is what I call luck. Eventually, those micro interactions will benefit you in some way. They might not ever, but if they do, you are given an opportunity, and that's where your skill needs to take over. So it's important to remember all of these things in the process of feeling grateful about something, or even trying to resolve how this has happened. Like, how have you been given this good opportunity? Well, first of all, we need to remember that we had potential and we have skills, and that even though we can't remember everything we've done to build up this work, it has happened, and you are capable of making great things. At the same time, luck has benefited your surrounding, that has created a situation where your skill can now take over and help you excel. Yeah, trying to resolve these things is kind of like an interesting and continuous process, but I think it's important because it helps you stave off some of that imposter syndrome. I do think it's important to keep some of it though, because it's a useful tool to kind of help you stay humble in your skill level. Because as we said earlier, there's always more to learn, there's always more to know, and if you feel overconfident, you're probably not going to be seeking out that information. So I think it's very important to feel some small sense of imposterism, just enough, but acknowledge it's like a tool for you. Use that information kind of to your benefit, to your advantage, to help you improve, to reach even more potential. Alright, is that enough for this endurance test of a video? I want to, like, is there anything else I can talk about? Sure, EasyBPY. I would like to invest more time into EasyBPY because I think actually helping people to make more content in terms of add-ons and kind of technical tools for Blender is going to be a very important thing in the future. My friend and I, so Joshua Bloomer, have a plan to do like some stuff relating to the EasyBPY project to kind of help people get on board with it, but I also want to explore more possibilities for simplifying the process of making classes for Blender and also interface elements, which I know other people are also exploring. In particular, I'm thinking about JF Matthew. I think they're doing something related to interfaces through Twitter. But even though this stuff is actually on the surface quite boring, just like code and modules and things, I think that the possibilities of how it can be used is actually really exciting, so it makes it much less boring. And I also try to offset the general boredom of basic code by presenting things in kind of creative and colorful ways, which is why if we go over to the webpage here, it's all kind of very colorful and there are lots of images and like there's even vibrancy in the code. But I think I'm probably going to move this over a bit more to the Notion part of the documentation, like as we talked about earlier with Modular Workspaces having nice documentation. I think EasyBPY would really benefit from something like that. I'm also kind of inspired by the Serpens documentation, Serpens being the visual scripting add-on for Blender to help you make add-ons from a node interface, and I really appreciate that project. I think they're doing some fantastic work. In fact, I'm actually using it as a menu reference, so sometimes like if you want to add buttons to certain menus in Blender, it's hard to know exactly what those menus are called because you need to append your function or your operation to the menu. So you need to give the menu name .append and then add your own one. Knowing what these are, it's a bit difficult, so what I tend to do now, and I haven't even told the add-on developers that I do this, you know, I open up the Serpens add-on, I go to the menu picker or the panel picker depending, and then it's a button you can press, and then you can choose on the interface where you want to add something, and then it kind of gives you the name of it, or at least part of the name, and then that helps me know exactly what kind of code to put in to add the button in the right place. So even though I'm not using Serpens to make my add-ons now, I am using it as like a creative reference. I think it's a really, really cool project. But I want to make EasyBPY a lot bigger. I want it to do a lot more things. I think like EasyBPY was born while I was on holiday once, down the coast actually, and I should be going on a bit of a short family holiday down to the coast in September. Maybe I can take another look at the EasyBPY project there, because obviously I won't be able to do any intense creative recording because I'll just be on my Surface Go 2. So maybe that would be a creative opportunity to take another look at the project. I know we're probably not supposed to talk about like unannounced projects too much because of the psychological aspect about it, but again, talking about Joshua, we had an idea to do like a really cool interactive kind of cookbook for EasyBPY to help people learn. That would be a really cool one. We've both been kind of busy, like I've been dealing with all my stuff obviously, and he's been like getting ready for uni and all of that, so I think we'll probably get back around to it, but there's just so much to make. Like I love this work, I love this job. If you feel like being an artist one day, you can be. If you feel like being a developer, you can be, and you can get paid for both of those things if you can make good videos about it. And then the bit that we should be most grateful for is that essentially you can adjust what you make based on how much money you want to make, which is like, and I never try to maximize it unless it's absolutely necessary. So for example, it has been necessary recently with the Modular Workspaces add-on. We got the studio coming and now have the medical bills. So we prioritize putting that out and adding a price tag to that to make some money. But like, again, I feel grateful because I have the option to do that. Like most people, they don't have a choice in being able to make more money one day in their work. Like that's just not a thing. I've seen a few like other creators in the general community, maybe a bit wider than the Blender community, complaining about YouTube before, saying like, oh, like you just can't make money off of it. Like it's just not sustainable. I'm like, well, you're using it wrong. I'm amazed by what it's allowed us to do, like every day. A lot of it feels like living in a dream sometimes, and I never want to lose that gratefulness. And though the system is not perfect, like there are a lot of weird kind of shady things which go on in YouTube, especially recently. Been thinking about like policy strikes, because there's been something about like kind of unfair policy enforcement for, I think this is more in particular for like the video game side of YouTube, and that's never nice to see. But on the whole, like it's just such an incredible platform. I think it's done so much for the world. It's given so many people like access to skills and knowledge and information. I think it's done a lot for mental health in some ways, and yes, there's an argument that it's done a lot against mental health, but I think it's connected people from around the world, and it helped with the exchange of ideas, and it keeps people like happy in the low parts of their lives where they can engage with their favorite creators. So it connects people through new communities and conferences as well. You know, there's just new circles appearing all the time thanks to YouTube. So yeah, I'm constantly amazed by it and happy to be a part of it. And can I just say, while we're kind of in the whole like grateful part of the video, I'm so impressed with some of my co-creators. There's one in particular, I'm not going to say their name, but they've been going through like a lot of stuff recently. Like they've had a sudden change in their environment, like, you know, a bit of family tension, an environment change where they've suddenly had to onboard like a lot of extra responsibilities. And I've been providing them with some kind of, we'll say therapy sessions, I guess it's just friends chatting and kind of, you know, giving support to each other, but like I really appreciate it. I've given like a lot of help and support and kind of therapy to friends which haven't given it back in the past, and that's always been a bit draining. But you know, actually having like a kind of a two-way thing with the creators and friends I surround myself with now, you know, it's fantastic, and I'm really proud of how they've been doing, and just watching, you know, my other co-creators and friends grow. I feel like the end of this year, or like even starting with the next month and going onwards, is going to be such a time for change for a lot of people. One of my friends and creators from India is coming over to the UK for the university. I can only imagine that's going to be intense for them. You know, I'm going to hopefully meet up with them and that'll be cool, but like, man, that's going to be such a life change. A lot of people are going to the Blender conference for the first time, especially like some younger members in the community as well, including some of my moderators for my server. I remember my first time going, it's going to be interesting, like kind of ushering them into that kind of environment. Also talking to new people at the conference, like I'm really looking forward to it. I'm kind of nervous already. Like I know I'm going to be crapping bricks before I enter the conference. It's going to be interesting speaking to all of these new people. Or like the last time I went was in 2019, right? And a lot of the creators I admired back then that I didn't necessarily have a chance to speak to, I have spoken to now online, and now they are aware of me, and I don't know what it's going to be like. Like, I don't think I would have ever been to like an environment like that where all of a sudden you know pretty much everyone and everyone pretty much knows you, and there's like a lot of people. I'm looking forward to seeing what talks are going to be done there as well. I know that Paul Kajeji is doing one, a friend from the Blenderness community. I know Blender Bob's doing one. I don't have like a comprehensive list. I think Brady Johnston's doing one about molecular stuff. I haven't spoken to him yet, but I want to learn more about him. I think it's going to be really interesting, really cool. I hope they record it. They like the Blender channel on YouTube has recently put up a video kind of showing some clips from the SIGGRAPH conference, but I hope they get someone to record the Blender conference in the Felix Meritis at Amsterdam, because it would be nice to kind of codify these experiences into video. Okay, well, I've been recording for just over an hour. This may be trimmed down a bit. I think this has been a kind of a good endurance test. So later on in the day, I'm going to see whether this hurts anymore, like to an above average degree to previous days. I've also been having quite a lot of caffeine, which has been why I've been speaking a bit faster, and that's also to kind of dehydrate. I do these weird tests on myself to get information. Should we add one more section? One more, just to really push it? I don't think I'm a hypochondriac. I do think I have a scientific mind in the way that I'm curious about everything. So whenever I do get a kind of medical issue, I try and gather as much information as possible. I log all of it. I do daily logs. I write down all of my thoughts about it. I do experiments to see what changes. I write down all my notes about that as well. When something happens or when something enters my life, I try and learn everything about it because I'm interested, which means I have a lot of hyper-specific knowledge about hyper-specific medical quirks. Now, this was actually extremely beneficial when I had a problem where I had a head hair from my head, obviously, that had somehow gotten into my ear canal, and it was quite a short piece actually, and it was poking into my eardrum and causing a significant amount of pain. Like, it's a really freak accident. It's a really odd thing. So I managed to get hold of like a kind of, you know, it's just a small kind of digital endoscope thing which connects to an app, and I was kind of, you know, poking it in. And you've got to be careful with your eardrum, but I was able to see the head hair and get really good imagery of it as well. So I took that to the emergency room to try and get them to kind of take it out, because at that point it was actually causing like a massive amount of pain. I couldn't sleep properly, but they couldn't see it. Like with their otoscopes they have from like 1970 whatever, they weren't able to see it, so I had to kind of show them using the thing. And I'm like, well, if they wouldn't be able to see it, how long would it take for them to like diagnose that? And they weren't helpful at all. So I eventually went private again, kind of, this has become a recurring theme, and took it to an ENT who did have more appropriate tools, and they could see it, and then they removed it immediately. So being interested and kind of taking this extra intuition is sometimes really, really helpful. But the thing is about this kind of like ADD-ish hyperfixation is it's become like a really strong interest now, and I don't know where the limit is. So I've been trying to give myself a mirror laryngoscopy to try and look at my own vocal cords, because you can do it yourself. If you've got like a kind of face mirror to check yourself, if you've got a strong source of light and an adjustable dental mirror as well, you can just about, if you get the angle right, kind of see your vocal cords. But given the shape of my mouth and throat, it's actually really tricky to get the light down there. But I've really been trying, and I've got so tantalizingly close. But I do have a lot of really high quality footage of my epiglottis, which is, if I pronounce that right, it's a kind of like flap, which kind of, alright, I'll stop. We won't go that far. But I did stumble on a video recently where someone made their own x-ray machine, and it was kind of okay, and I'm like, yes, that is me in the future. Totally gonna do that. Obviously, I don't want to give myself like a tumor. Alright, we should end this before I share too much information. If you made it this far, God knows like why you made it this far through the video. Then put a bird, some kind of bird, as like the emoji in the comments so I can see if you made it. I'm gonna get back to random tasks. I might fly from, actually let's check the map just before we go. If I go into flight sim today, I've been flying the Typhoon around Europe because it's a really fast jet. Really quite fun to fly. So, okay, we went from Croatia to Kosovo. How far do you think I'll be able to go? I want to check out Greece because I want to see the satellite imagery there. So maybe I'll go from Kosovo to Athens, I think, later. And have a quick look. What do we got? Maybe I'll be able to check out the Acropolis as well on my way there. That could be cool. All right, anyway, have a fantastic day, everyone, and I will see you next time.